Hi, I'm Bo Sanchez. We've been homeschooling our kids for the past 7 years. And I'd like to say that homeschooling them, teaching them at home, is one of the best decisions we've ever made in our lives. I'm here to share with you how you can send your kids to the best school in the world and save 80% of what you're spending right now. I'd like to share with you the 10 powerful principles on how you can teach your kids at home and be able to strengthen your relationship with your children, how you can build values into their hearts, how you can protect them from useless harm, how you can reduce stress, yours and theirs, how you can be able to have more free time for family, and how you can be able to get a Department of Education accreditation. I'd like to share that with you today. Some people tell me, but aren't you depriving him of his socialization? Believe me, I cannot count the number of times I've heard this line from well-meaning friends when they learn that we don't send our kids to school, but instead teach them at home. Here are some other comments we've heard, some with sense, others just plain funny. Won't he become abnormal? You're overprotecting him. Let go and let God. He needs to learn how to fight, become tough, and experience the world. Di ba yung mga homeschool pang artista lang yan? I smile at everyone who gives me these comments and then explain these facts. Today, there are millions of kids being homeschooled in the world. Studies in the US show that test after test, after test after test, show that the average homeschooler academically beats the national average of all students every time, at every year level, at every subject. Why? Here's the truth that has been hidden from you and from the world at large. Homeschooling is the best educational system in this planet. It beats the most expensive, the most exclusive private schools money can afford. Unbelievable? Read on. I bet you know some of these homeschooled kids. Just in case you think that homeschooled kids may become social misfits and social idiots, let me show you a little list of a few homeschooled kids in the world. Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Claude Monet, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Douglas MacArthur, George Patton, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington, Woodrow Wilson, John Wesley, Blaise Pascal, Winston Churchill, Hans Christian Andersen, Agatha Christie, Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, and so on and on and on and on and on. Why can homeschool kids produce world-class achievers? Because of the core principles embedded in the system of teaching your own child. Here are the secrets of the best educational system in the world. Here are the 10 core principles that will change your child's life and your life as well. Follow your child's passion, follow your child's learning style, follow your child's learning pace per subject. Never use fear and punishments as motivation. Use tests and grades as tools for gauging mastery, not as tools to label and terrorize your child. Nurture a great love for reading. Make ordinary life events as your classroom. Make work and service essential to your child's education. Build your family relationship, the greatest reward. Personally share your faith and values with your child. Here is a promise. If you follow these 10 core principles in teaching your child, you will dramatically change the life of your child and your life as well. Core principle 1, follow your child's passion. One of my son's first words was horse. I'm not kidding. It was spoken together with mama and mamam. As a toddler, he already loved playing with plastic toy horses, riding in wooden rocking horse, and looking at pictures of all sorts of horses. So we gave him large books on horses, and he gobbled them up and kept asking for more. Together, we studied the different breeds from around the world, the evolution of the horse, the equipment needed to ride horses. We bought him coloring books with lots and lots of horses. At 3 years old, he was already riding real horses by himself. Today, he dreams of owning a ranch where he'll own 10 horses as a business. He said he'd let the kids ride on the horses for a fee. His ranch will also have a restaurant, a fake jungle with robotic animals, and a man-made lake with a shipwreck as added attractions. Because of his passion for horses, he learned the following: to read a lot, do artwork, coloring, study science, horse anatomy, history and culture, physical education, and even business. Yes, he studied all those subjects just because of his love for horses. No forcing, no pushing, no intimidating, no stress. Because it was his passion, he loved to learn. That, my friends, is one of the best secrets of homeschool. What is your child's passion? It may not be obvious at first, but it's got history, science, math, and art in there. Is your child a comic book lover? Encourage him. That requires reading too. Research together on comic book authors, illustrators, and companies. Sign him up for the drawing classes. Tell him to rent out his comics for a fee. And through the internet, find out which comic books sell for thousands of dollars today. Let him draw one and sell it to relatives. Do the math for his small businesses. Is he a basketball fan? Then read about the history of basketball. Go through basketball statistics. Study which muscle groups need to be highly developed in basketball. Create artwork on basketball players. Play ball regularly and watch some games together. When my son was 4, we started playing Cash Flow for Kids, a game where players buy real estate and invest in stocks. We found out that aside from financial knowledge, it's a great way for our son to learn mental math. We also played his Pokemon cards, and his maths improved because of the constant adding and subtracting in the game. We recommend more real books like biographies, classic tales, and special interest books. In fact, we recommend living books like interviewing experts instead of just reading facts. Again, this cannot happen in a traditional school. There are programmed topics to discuss for every week, and the entire class has to go through them. And thus, boredom sets in. Not because they're dumb, but simply because their passions aren't pursued. In homeschool, you see anything that he's interested in to learn all sorts of subjects. Because when he's interested about something, you simply ride the horse of his passion, and off you go at 100 kilometers per hour. And not only the child's passion, but you also follow something very important in your child. Core principle number 2, follow your child's learning style. Your child is a genius. You just have to know what kind of genius. Let me give you a very simple example of what I mean by following your child's learning style. When my son Bennett was 5 years old, he was having problems with his math exercises. It would take him ages to write down his answers. Bennett would get totally bored, and we'd catch him stalling and dilly-dallying in the middle of a writing exercise. His thoughts would wander, sometimes creating a full-length movie in his mind. We know because we hear him whispering bang, 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 shoosh, and vaboom. It would happen every time, and my wife would be totally frustrated. After many weeks of tension-filled homeschool sessions, "Son, finish that now! I said now!" My wife was wondering if math was his Waterloo. Did he really hate math? And then an idea struck her. She picked up the workbook and she verbally asked the questions and made it like a game. Benny would stand at the far end of our living room and he'd take one step for every right answer. Guess what? He breezed through it. At least at that particular stage in his life, 5 years old, oral and mental math was better than written math. Do you now see how only homeschool can make that kind of adjustment? Because the mother is teaching her child one-to-one, she can change teaching methods depending on the learning style of her child. Let me tell you what usually happens in a traditional school. Whenever a student is doing well in school, the school proudly points to themselves and say, "We're the reason why your child is performing well. We're good." But when a student is failing, the school points to the child and says, "There's something wrong with your kid." Okay, They may not say it in that way, but when the child is failing, or bored, or restless, or uncooperative, it's always the child's fault. You'll hear the experts say, your boy isn't learning because he's stubborn and has undiagnosed ADHD and probably has a slight form of dyslexia. Oh, sure. Gosh, why is it the kid always at fault? Remember this powerful rule. If the child is not learning, 99% of the time, it's not the child's fault. Instead, change the teaching method. Perhaps the parent isn't using the specific learning style of her child. There are 3 basic learning styles: auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, with as much as 27 subgroups. None is better than the other. You simply need to discover how your child processes information and then deliberately use his preferred choice. By simply observing how he learns best will already give you clues as to the genius of your child. There's nothing better than following the simple rule of thumb: do what works. Some kids prefer structure and like being told what to do. That's why there's room for the structured traditional school system done at home, while other kids like to do things on their own. And some learn more in particular environments and at particular times of the day, so adjust accordingly. Believe me, this is much better than scolding, shouting, and bullying our kids to fit our teaching methods. And if you think that this is a powerful principle, wait till you read the next one. Core principle number 3. Follow the learning pace of your child per subject. A traditional classroom with 40 kids has one established pace of learning. Usually, they try to go mid-speed, not too fast and not too slow. Sometimes this learning pace is too slow for your child, resulting in boredom. I know many children who are failing in school, not because they're dumb, but because of the opposite reason. They're actually too bright and are totally bored by class. On a few occasions, the pace may be too fast and your child is left behind. Here's something else you've got to think about. Your child has different speeds per subject. Your child may be at 80 kilometers per hour in English and only 40 kilometers per hour in math. In homeschooling, you can simply adjust with his pace for each subject. Here's the rule. When you see him bored, usually it's because he already knows the material. Try going faster and introduce new material. For example, if your child is totally bored by his grade 3 English, what's stopping you from zooming ahead and tackling grade 4 English? When my son was 5 years old, I remember bringing him to the doctor's clinic, and while in the waiting room, Benny would sit and quietly read his books. And every time, people around would be shocked seeing that this little guy reading Charlotte's Web, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and James and the Giant Peach, stuff usually read at grade 3 levels. I believe we underestimate our kids. If you follow your child's pace, you may be surprised at his speed of learning. On the other hand, there's no point in rushing a child to read, or write, or do math when he's not yet ready. Tests have proven that kids who learn to finally read well as late as age 10 onwards do catch up very quickly and surpass the early readers from your regular schools. Again, don't pressure yourself or your child. I believe that you should avoid giving study pressures until kids are age 8 to 12. If you follow their passion and learning pace, you don't need pressure. And one more thing about pressure. Core principle number 4, never use fear and punishment as motivation. This mystified me. I learned that the expert animal trainers of dogs, birds, lions, tigers, seals, cats, and even dolphins have very important basic rules. Never insult the animal, and never offend the animal, and never hurt the animal, or the animal doesn't learn. But John Holt says that we forget this rule when it comes to training human beings. I agree with him. How many times have I heard parents and teachers and aunts and uncles and grandfathers and grandmothers insult their own little children? We scream at them, we call them names, we bully them, we intimidate them, we make them cower in fear just so they do what we want them to do. Here's a rule. The moment the teacher is shouting in anger, true learning stops. You can use angry shouting for emergencies, but you don't use it in education. True learning means having fun. If it is not fun, do something about it. In homeschooling, true learning has to be fun and exciting for your child. If it isn't, you adjust and make it so. When learning is fun, your child will go 100 kilometers per hour. But when learning is forced upon him, he will go 2 kilometers per hour with lots of dilly-dallying and delaying tactics. Banish fear and punishment from your educational system. They simply don't work. And in homeschool, you simply drop whatever isn't helping a child. Why? Because you're not tied to one way of doing things. So if you see that your teaching method or curriculum or class schedule or textbook, it could be anything, isn't helping but blocking your child's learning, drop it and try something new. Believe me, it's much better than forcing it down the little guy's throat with anger, intimidation, and threats of punishment. Note, you can of course use reason and persuasion to convince him to read a particular book he doesn't like to read. That's okay. Traditional classrooms, by their very structure, are inflexible. Even if a student isn't learning, the activity or book or method has to go on, understandably, because there are 40 other students in class. My next principle is probably the most controversial of all. Core principle number 5. Use tests and grades to gauge mastery, not tools to label and terrorize your child. Traditional schools create good test takers. But do they create good learners and critical thinkers and passionate kids? Tests and exams create fear because the results of tests are used to label children with a grade. I repeat, true learning cannot happen in the presence of fear. Pseudo-learning, yes, and that happens quite often. Kids, under enormous pressure, memorize stuff. And when grades are given, the kids are labeled, categorized, and branded. I ask, why? What for? Why not just go through a series of questions and when they make an error, teach them the right answer at that moment? Why do you have to give him a 0 point for not knowing the answer? I really believe that we have adults now who are totally unproductive in their lives because they have a fear of making mistakes, which they learned from school. But mistakes are important. I've come to realize that the most successful people in the world are those who have made the most mistakes. So in place of traditional tests, what should we do? Use the child's desire to tell stories about what she knows. There's something even better than workbooks. Fill in the blanks, multiple choices, and true and false items and a list of questions. Charlotte Mason recommends that we use the power of narration. In other words, why not ask children to tell stories? By doing so, they don't get bits of information, but real knowledge. We confuse the two. They're actually worlds apart. Only when kids tell stories, either in written or oral forms, or recounting plot behind science, history, and religion, can you instill a genuine love for knowledge, and not a fear for failure, or even a shallow desire for high grades. And please, don't grade their narration with an A or C or an F. Instead, engage them in conversation. Ask questions, talk some more. Tell your child where he was excellent. Point out where they can do better. But most importantly, enjoy the conversation. Note, I started a homeschool provider called Catholic Filipino Academy, or CFA. It's the first Catholic homeschool provider that does purely homeschool services in the Philippines. And for DepEd requirements, CFA will give quarterly tests to measure the child's grasp of the subject matter, but without the threats, the fear, the negative competition, or the labeling usually involved in tests. Believe me, that's when real learning happens. The next principle is a tough one, but it's crucial for the success of our kids. Core principle number 6, nurture a great love for reading. The Catholic Filipino Academy's goal is self-directed learning. You want your child to start learning on his own because of his sheer love for knowledge. Yes, every child has an insatiable hunger to learn. You just have to connect to that, release that desire, and see her conquer the world. But self-directed learning can happen more easily if a child develops a love for reading as well. A fair warning: some children develop late at reading. Don't worry. In a few years, homeschoolers catch up quickly and surpass the reading abilities of children going to regular schools. How do you nurture that in a child? Read to your child books that interest them and surround them with books, and more books. Find out what interests a child. When your child can't read yet, set a special time each day where you read to them. Ham it up, play act, put drama, get into the role and let your child laugh and have a great time. There are 4 types of readers depending on their preferred subject matter. No time to discuss this now, but this will be included in the Quick Start training program we give parents with children enrolled in CFA. Surround your child with the books on her preferred subject. Buy, barter, and borrow. Do what you must, but those books have to be there for easy reach. Tip: get those series books, because when your child gets hooked on one book, he'd want to read every book in the series. My son read 34 books of the Magic Tree House series. And parents, your kids have to see you reading books as well. Cut TV watching and computer games to a minimum so that there'll be generous time for reading every day. Reading for pleasure is so important to learning. I'm saddened at the huge amount of homework kids bring home from school. That's the benefit of homeschool. Class is only 3 to 4 hours a day, so your child can read books for an hour or 2 each day for the sheer delight it brings. By the way, did that little fact surprise you? That homeschool takes only 3 to 4 hours a day? Here's the reality. Most of the hours in a traditional school is spent on waiting. Waiting for the classmates to arrive, waiting for everyone to settle down, waiting for the bell to ring. In homeschool, you can skip all that so that you have more time for what I call ordinary life events. Core principle number 7. Make ordinary life events as your classroom. Trust in your child. She learned how to smile, crawl, walk, talk, run, dress by herself, and understand her world before starting school. Because each child loves to learn. For them, it's as natural as breathing. Kids learn the way adults do, by their interests and by their curiosity. So why teach them in a different way? In fact, that's why John Holt coined the term unschooling. Because ultimately, you don't really teach your child. We use that word loosely. You merely provide the learning environment and resources so that your child self-learns. In the end, true learning and living cannot be separated. There are 3 things that you can do to use ordinary life events as your classroom. Number 1, let your child get involved in your adult world. Kids love to get involved in the adult world with what you're doing, so get them involved. Usually, your child will be passionate with what you're passionate about. Whatever your concerns are, she'll pick that up, latch on to that, and be passionate about that too. So whenever feasible, get them involved in your world. Bring them along when you work, if your work situation allows for this, and let them observe, help out, and do stuff for you. Yes, even if they bother you and slow you down. For example, John Holt recommends that math be learned by opening the financial books of the family and teaching children how the household money is earned, spent, and saved. If you're interested in business, I'll go even further and recommend that children start their own businesses and practice applied math right away. Believe me, when your child wants to know whether he can buy his favorite toy from his business profits for the month, he'll become a math wizard right before your eyes. Number 2, do real projects together. Would you be happy if you did something totally meaningless every day? But that's what school is to many children. Let's face it, even adults hate it when we do something that has no relevance with real life. So why do we ask our kids to do it and scold them when they get bored? Here are examples of what I mean by real projects. For those mechanically inclined, let your child build stuff with you for the house, stuff that you actually need and will actually use. For children who love music, prepare a mini concert for the next family get-together. Create invitation cards with silly artwork. Cook pasta together. Practice your child's welcome speech and have a musical complete with costumes and dance numbers. In one blow, you've had art lessons, music lessons, speech lessons, and theater lessons. But more importantly, you've built character and confidence in your child. And instead of listening to a lecture of loving the poor, volunteer to build a house in Gawad Kalinga village, or help in an orphanage each month, or go to the province and work with farmers. At the end of the day, real education isn't information, but transformation. And that's what will happen if you use ordinary life events as your classroom. Number 3, finally, don't program everything. Let your child be. Please set aside enough time for your child for his play and imagination every day. Don't try to do what some overzealous homeschool moms do. Cram a ton of activities, workbooks, games, projects, songs, and chores into their child's life from dawn to dusk. Not only isn't this beneficial to your child, it will also burn you out. Let your child be for long stretches of time every day, without you telling them what to do, just so that he could be himself and think and read and ponder and imagine. Fantasy is his way of learning how to cope with the world. These times are very important for his own self-learning. During these times, you'll find out that he's trying to figure things on his own, how stuff works, how the world works. That's a crucial part of homeschooling when you're not around. Core principle number 8, make work and service essential to your child's education. I repeat our philosophy. The best way to learn is to actually do it. It beats any lecture, any book, any field trip, any counseling. For example, our son has a bangus business and he gained much confidence because of it. At the age of 5, he handed out flyers to our visitors at home. He went around in his 3-wheeled bicycle and delivered them to his grandmother's house. I asked him for suggestions when we designed that leaflet. He also wrote down his first prospect list of 10 people who'd buy from him, mostly our family. As he grows older, we will slowly give him more and more responsibilities to his growing business. According to the Moore Foundation, a pioneer in homeschooling, education should not just be number 1, study. It should also contain equal amounts of number 2, work, and number 3, service, thus forming the 3 basics of a good homeschool education. By work, we mean household chores and entrepreneurship. Believe me, when you give your children responsibility for certain parts of a household and certain parts of a small home business, you'll see him rapidly grow and mature before your eyes. You'll solve many character and personality problems spontaneously, better than all your scolding, homilies, lectures, and punishments. And don't give cash for household chores, or you program them to become employees. They need to produce or sell something in business to earn something, and you program them to be entrepreneurs. And what does service mean? Let your child regularly serve among the poor, in an orphanage, in a soup kitchen, in a home for the elderly. Set a daily schedule for service in the neighborhood if possible. You'll find your child growing in love, character, kindness, and integrity. Their sense of compassion and nobility of heart will increase. By the way, please remember that there's a number 4, and that's prayer. But it shouldn't be separated from 1, 2, and 3. We recommend that before and after study, work, and service, you pray with your child, and your child will realize that everything must be done with God and for God. And now, for one of the most important things in your life. Core principle number 9, build family relationships. your greatest reward. In homeschool, you spend each day with your child, playing games, swapping stories, taking adventures, reading stories, and creating memories that will last a lifetime. Yes, you bond with your child in an extraordinary way. And if you have more than one child, you bond the siblings together too. The older children teach the younger children, and because teaching is the best way of learning, everyone benefits. On a whim, my wife can bring our 2 children for a trip to wherever. They can visit a sick friend or attend a birthday party. They can go to the zoo or a museum or a movie. Probably the first question people will ask about homeschooling is, what about the child's socialization? Here's the answer. On average, homeschooled kids have been known to be more socially adept and more socially confident than other children. Shocked? Here's why. In homeschool, kids get the right kind of socialization because you want your child to learn character, morals, and manner from you, not from his peers. Offer true love, not anti-socialization. This is the most asked question to me. What about your child's socialization? Here's my answer. Many times, large schools today offer our children anti-socialization. Without meaning to do so, they open our kids to the meanness of other kids, the bullying, the snobbishness, the peer pressure. Kids don't need that daily pressure to grow into healthy, positive kids. Let your child grow in a place where his self-worth and confidence is established. Once that's settled deep within, he can conquer the world. Sometimes I think they can conquer any planet. Does your child need to relate with kids his own age? Yes, he does. He needs 2 or 3 of them, but not necessarily 40. Perhaps cousins and neighbors he can play with every day. Find ways where he can compete in sports and be with other kids. We enrolled our son in a gym class where he goes once a week. And because of our regular prayer meetings in our Catholic community, he gets to have many friends among the children of other members. Core principle number 10. Personally, share your faith and your values to your child. Today, many kids have tepid faith and weak values. And one reason for this? Parents are no longer seriously taking their spiritual responsibility to introduce the Lord to their children. Instead, many parents pass the spiritual responsibility onto the school. But that doesn't work. How can a school do it with hundreds or thousands of kids under their administration? Dearest parent, you're the priest in your home, and one of your most important roles is to bring your child into a vibrant relationship with God. Of course, a teacher or priest can do this, but only as an added support to you. Ultimately, that's your job. Faith and values aren't taught as much as caught. Homeschooling is the perfect context where this contaminating can take place. In our homeschool program at CFA, we wish to deepen the Catholic faith of our children. This will be our specialty. However, children from other denominations are always welcome. After all, their parents will pass their faith to them. Friend, you need to deepen your own Catholic faith. For how can you give what you don't have? And if you think that's not enough, here are more benefits to homeschooling your child. Let me share with you 3 more incredible reasons for considering homeschool. First benefit, you protect your children from evil. Second benefit, you save lots and lots of money. Third benefit, you save lots and lots of time and save yourself and your child from unnecessary stress. Let me explain these benefits to you one by one. First benefit, you protect your children from evil. I know many parents who homeschool their kids for this one reason alone. Let's face it, evil is a monster that waits for easy prey, like our defenseless children. I met a 5-year-old who likes saying F-U-C-K. It sent chills down my spine. Guess where he learned it? I also met a distraught father who told me that a 13-year-old female classmate was offering his 12-year-old son sex. He found out when he accidentally read a text message on the cell phone meant for his son. He showed it to me, and I couldn't believe a 13-year-old girl could write it. It was pure hardcore porn. I also met a small 7-year-old that was bullied each day in his school bus. A bigger fellow would call him insect and worm, ridicule him to shreds, drown him with insults twice a day, every single school day. By the way, let me tell you an example from my own life. In my very well-respected Catholic school, one of my male teachers taught us in his class that we should go to a prostitute as early as possible so that we become real men. In fact, he had already initiated his own 13-year-old son very recently. And so that we don't get venereal disease, he instructed us to take 2 tablets of 500 milligrams of antibiotics. He even recommended the brand, 1 tablet a day before going to a prostitute, and another tablet on the day itself. And yes, some of my classmates actually followed his fatherly advice. I haven't even mentioned about drugs, drinking, violence, and sexual abuse. In homeschool, you protect your children from these unnecessary negative influences. Second benefit, you save lots and lots of money. Homeschooling tuition is a tiny fraction of the expensive tuition fees of exclusive schools today. My friend pays 120,000 pesos a year to send her grade school son to one of the most prestigious schools in the Philippines, where the ratio is 1 teacher to 40 students. In homeschool, the ratio is 1 teacher to 1 student, you and your child. And for how much? At least in CFA, it's only 19,975 pesos per year. Different homeschool providers differ in fees. You can ask around. In CFA, we also use local textbooks. That's why we call ourselves Catholic Filipino Academy. Not only because our child will know our culture more, but also because they'll save parents their hard-earned money. So instead of spending 15,000 pesos for foreign textbooks, that's what my other homeschooling friend spends for her child because their homeschool provider uses imported textbooks. The CFA standard lesson plans and all core textbooks would cost around 3,000 to 4,000 pesos only per year. And because your child will stay at home, you won't spend for daily food allowances and the daily transportation expenses such as school bus fees. Now that's big savings. You'll also save from the fees for projects and school uniforms and Boy Scout uniforms and PE uniforms. The list is endless. An added savings. If you have more than 1 child, you buy your textbooks only once. Because in homeschool, books are passed from older children to younger children. Because in homeschool, you make the rules about textbooks. Note, I'll use CFA figures, but you can replace that with the figures of other homeschool providers. For regular school, expenses on tuition and miscellaneous would be about, let's say, average of 50,000. In homeschool, that's 20,000. Daily transportation, regular school would be 20,000. Homeschool, 0. Daily allowance for a regular school, 30,000. In a homeschool, 0. Uniform, etc. for regular school, 5,000. In a homeschool, 0. Textbooks, regular school, maybe 5,000. In homeschool, 3,500. Year total, regular schooling, 110,000. Average. In homeschooling, maybe about 23,500. The comparison is almost absurd. You save 86,500. You can put your savings to buying more books for yourself and your children, especially books that your child is interested in. You can also take more trips together and learn through those trips. You can also invest in getting more training for yourself because the better you become, the more you can give to your child. And one more fantastic benefit. Third benefit, you save lots and lots of time and save yourself and your child from unnecessary stress. Let me guess. If you send your kids to school, do they have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and travel for an hour through traffic? Don't you just think this is simply nuts? And do they have to go through that same traffic going home? And when they get home, do they have to do their homework, which requires tutoring? Wait a minute. You pay the school to teach your kids, right? Why do you now have to tutor them every evening? And sometimes even hire a private tutor for your child. Isn't this illogical? And are some of your kids stressed out by their load and schedule? In homeschool, you don't have traffic. Yes, you don't have to wake up your kids at 5:30 in the morning, and you don't have homework. and you don't have overstressed kids, and your classes are only 3 to 4 hours a day. Now tell me, isn't that a great deal? Other questions. Here are some answers. Gosh, I'm an ordinary mother. Can I really homeschool? You're homeschooling right now. Who taught your child to walk, to talk, to eat with a spoon, to kiss, and to hug? You did that. I believe any parent, almost any parent, can homeschool their child. Is there a homeschool program for high school? Yes, CFA accepts preschool, grade school, and high school kids. Will my child get DepEd accreditation if I homeschool him? In CFA, there are 2 tracks, guided homeschool and unguided homeschool. We recommend that first-time homeschoolers take track 1, guided homeschool, where we give lesson plans and quarterly exams. You can take that all online. And if you do submit, through those exams, by the way, we give the exams twice in the philosophy and principle of homeschooling, that it's not there to label your child. But why twice? Whatever mistakes he made or she made on the first try, they can try it again and perfect it the second time. Learning, that's the goal. So anyway, I'm veering away here. Basically, in track 1, guided homeschooling, is that you will get DepEd accreditation because your child has gone through the quarterly exams, and we're tied up with our sister school, the Barcelona Academy. That's why your child will get DepEd accreditation. Now there is a track 2. The track 2 is what we call unguided homeschooling. That's for some children who are more fit with a less structured environment. We will still give you all the lesson plans, we will still provide you all the quarterly exams, but only as a resource. Your child need not even take them, and you don't even have to submit any quarterly grades. What happens is that you will be free to explore and take other options. What we will do is we'll provide for you the environment of homeschooling and other activities, like our anointing day, our moving up day, our linggo ng wika day, and all that, other activities, our Friday clubs, etc. But in track 2, what we will do is we will support you and guide you so that you will take your child at the end of the year to the Department of Education office and take a validation exam. We will support, we will give you some resources and materials, but your child will have to take that exam so that that child will get Department of Education accreditation. I hope that's clear. If that's not clear, you ask us and we will explain more those 2 tracks for you. What if I'm a working mom? Can I possibly homeschool? One of our main requirements is that at least one parent does not have a full-time job. We would rather that one parent be full-time at home teaching the child. Now sometimes, case to case, we will accept maybe, the parent is working part-time, or something like that. So we'll take that into consideration, but we will prefer if one parent is really full-time in homeschooling. Am I expected to teach algebra to my child? You'll be amazed at the amount of resources available to you at the internet, where you could learn simplified ways of teaching algebra or any other difficult subject. Or you can ask another homeschool mom or dad to teach a difficult subject where they're the experts. My child has autism. Does homeschooling work for him? We believe that homeschooling is the best option for kids with special needs. However, CFA does not have a special education department that can tailor fit the education or the curriculum for your child. So we recommend that you could enroll to CFA, but you need to have a extra consultant or counselor or a special education teacher that you can ask specific questions and maybe create a specific lesson plan for your child. Thank you so much for staying with me in this long video. If you're still with me, that means you really are interested, and I congratulate you. Thank you so much. Do not stop asking questions. The reason why we put up CFA is because we wanted to help our kids receive a Catholic education. And you know, it's a Catholic program, so we will help your kids receive the sacraments, receive confession, the sacrament of reconciliation, and the sacrament of the Eucharist. That's what we love to do, and we're inviting you. If you're interested in homeschooling, keep on asking questions. We'll be here. My last message to you is this: you don't have to join CFA. You can join another homeschool program, or even if you say homeschooling is great, but it's not for me. I just one last thing to tell you: do not pass on your responsibility to raise your child to a school. You might even say, hey, homeschooling is not for me, and I need my child to go to a regular school. That's fine. But still, even if you do, God has given you into your heart the responsibility to raise your child, to develop in him spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, financially, physically, all the areas of a child's life. You're responsible to raise it up and to develop that child, to make that child into the image of Jesus. And that's your responsibility. Don't pass it on to other people. That's my word for you. This is Bo Sanchez saying thank you so much. There's an email address at the bottom of this video, and you can write us and then ask us. There's a phone number. There's another website that you can look at on Catholic Filipino Academy. God bless you.